and welcome to the Hardline Curling Show. Hope you had a great holiday season. A new year is upon us, and there's a lot going on both on and off the ice. On this episode, Canada crowns its Olympic mixed doubles hopefuls, some top men's teams duke it out in Lloydminster, and the Grand Slam of Curling returns to Ontario. All of that, plus players come together to call for more consistent equipment standards. We'll dig into that, and we'll catch up with one of the game's great personalities. It's a jam-packed show, so let's get started. The 2026 Olympic Winter Games are still more than a year away, but excitement is already starting to build, and over the new year, we learned which team will have a chance to wear the maple leaf in mixed doubles curling. 16 teams arrived in Liverpool, Nova Scotia, hoping to become Canada's representative at this year's World Championship, and ultimately in Italy next year. Split into two pools of 8, they played a 7-game round robin, with the top 3 teams in each pool advancing to the playoff qualifiers. When the dust settled, it was the duo that just formed this season, Brittany Tran and Riley Kleider, setting atop Pool A with a 6-1 record, and 2019 world silver medalist Jocelyn Peterman and Brant Gallant claiming top spot in Pool B at a perfect 7-0. Peterman and Gallant continued to roll in their Page 1-2 qualifier, downing Rachel Homan and Brendan Bottcher, but Tran and Kleider could not follow suit, falling to Lisa Weigel and John Epping. However, they would have a second chance to advance in the 3-4 qualifier, and they took full advantage, knocking off Jennifer Jones and Brent Lang to earn a spot in the 3-4 playoff. Meanwhile, Homan and Bottcher bounced back to defeat the father-daughter duo of Jim and Jalen Cotter in the other 3-4 qualifier. So the top 4 teams in pool play getting through to the Page playoffs, where Peterman and Gallant stayed hot in the 1-2 game, beating Weigel and Epping to punch their ticket to the final. In the 3-4 game, it was Homan and Bottcher coming away with the win over Tran and Kleider, setting up a matchup between former women's teammates Homan and Weigel and their partners in the semifinal, with Peterman and Gallant awaiting the winner. Homan and Bottcher secured their spot in the final with an 8-6 victory, so it was down to 2, and Peterman and Gallant came out swinging, scoring 3 in the opening end and stealing another point in the second to take an early 4-0 lead. That would prove to be huge. After Homan and Bottcher got one back in 3, the teams would exchange deuces for the next 4 ends, giving Peterman and Gallant a 3-point cushion entering the 8th. And they'd need it all, as Homan and Bottcher would steal 2, coming up just a bit short, 8-7 the final. So Jocelyn Peterman and Brant Gallant going undefeated to claim the mixed doubles trials title. They will now represent Canada at this year's World Championships, where they will have a chance to punch their ticket to the Olympic Games. While many teams will be shifting their focus to provincial playdowns and national championships in the coming weeks, there are still some big events on the tour schedule in January. One of those is the Astec Safety Challenge, which took place last week in Lloydminster, Alberta. The men's event featuring many of the world's top teams looking to open 2025 with a sizable payday. The field rivaling that of a Grand Slam. Just listen to the list of skips that qualified for the playoffs: Bruce Mowat, Reid Carruthers, Yannick Schwaller, Mike McEwen, Matt Dunstone, Ross White, Brad Gushue, and Nicholas Edin. Talk about a murderer's row. And you can understand why so many heavy hitters were in there, with a $125,000 purse up for grabs. And while Mowat and Gushue have been the hottest of the bunch this season, neither would make the final, with Gushue falling to Edin in the quarters and Mowat being beaten by McEwen in the semis. The final featuring 2 skips who have represented Manitoba and Saskatchewan at different points in their careers, McEwen and Dunstone. It was a tight game, busting wide open in the 4th end. Score tied at 1, and McEwen with the hammer facing 4. Dunstone counters with his first shot. McEwen would be too tight, rubbing off one of his own rocks on the top of the house, but Dunstone would give him another chance to score after his guard overcurled. However, McEwen once again would crash on a guard, a costly mistake, giving Dunstone a steal of 4 and a 5-1 lead. That was more than enough, and they would shake hands after 6 ends, as Matt Dunstone, 3rd, Colton Lott, 2nd, EJ Harnden, and lead Ryan Harnden claimed the Astec Safety Challenge title and a cool $35,000. Team McEwen doesn't go home empty-handed, as they still earn $24,000 as the runner-up. It's time to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little curling controversy, and later we'll check in with Colin Hodgson.
The Canadian curling trials. The thing we cried for, fought for, thrown 1,000 rocks for. The podium, just out of reach. But we can almost taste the gold medals in our teeth. Defiant, We take down giants with nothing but the stones in our hands. And in the stands, they wait and see who among us will earn the right to wear the maple leaf.
The live sports experience is changing. Teams and facilities are under pressure to provide online and in-venue entertainment. IKS Live has the right team to deliver. We provide service across North America and produce the best fan experience, in the seats or streaming to you. IKS Live continues to bring you the best seat in the house.
Curling means so much to our family. Obviously, it's a big part of our life.
Wait's good.
Isabella always says that she wants to be an Olympic champion curler when she grows up, which just melts my heart. But it also has shown them that if you work hard, anything is possible. If I was to ask them if they wanted to chase a dream, they believe that anything is possible as long as they put the work in, and it's because of watching us on the ice.
Everest is here to support you in the moments that matter. Learn how at everestfuneral.ca.
Remember Broomgate? It's been almost 10 years since the debate kicked up over broomhead materials and directional sweeping. Well, the conversation around curling equipment is back on the table as some of the biggest names in the sport have banded together to call for a more consistent standard when it comes to the broomhead covers that are used by the top teams around the world. It's one of several items that curlers would like to see addressed at the sport's highest level. 15 men's and 15 women's teams have signed their names on what they're calling a proposal for fair play in curling, which is mainly focused on the latest advancements in broomhead technology and the impact those new developments are having on competition. The crux of the issue is new foam outer skins developed by a trio of equipment manufacturers, Goldline, Hardline, and Balance Plus. While the broomheads do comply with world curling specifications, there's concern that their use does not fully align with the competitive principles that were set out at a 2016 sweeping summit, which sought to minimize the directional influence that brooms have on curling stones while prioritizing delivery skills and ensuring fair play. The controversy, if you can call it that, is rooted in what players feel are inconsistent equipment testing standards at the world level, and as a result, insufficient data on the new broomheads and their ability to influence the direction of stones. Interestingly enough, two of the three manufacturers, Goldline and Hardline, have also signed the fair play proposal, while Balance Plus has also acknowledged that the issue is worth addressing. While the players group is looking for a solution to the problem in the long term, they're also taking some steps on their own to address it in the short term, starting with this week's Grand Slam event, the WFG Masters. Teams using Goldline equipment have reverted to a different foam cover instead of the new controversial ones, while Hardline-sponsored teams who have yet to adopt the new covers made by that company will continue using their current ones. Balance Plus doesn't have a substitute cover approved for use by the group, but Team John Epping, which plays with Balance Plus brooms, has applied to World Curling for an exemption to use a competitor's foam moving forward until the issue is resolved. While broomhead covers are the primary focus of the fair play proposal, the players group also identified some other priorities, including drafting a unified player equipment agreement, a new brush testing camp potentially to be held in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and the formal establishment of a new players association, something which does not currently exist in the sport. Needless to say, there's a lot to digest, and it will certainly be interesting to see how the conversation evolves from here and what steps are taken next. Of course, we will keep you posted on the latest developments in the weeks and months to come. Our next guest knows a thing or two about sweeping. He's thrown lead stones for Mike McEwen and Reed Carruthers in the past, and he is a community partner with the Cree Nation of Chisasibi, and they're working together to introduce the sport to the region. Last year, they hosted the first fully led Indigenous curling exhibition. Colin Hodgson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't start by getting your take on this new proposal for fair play and the discussion about all the broomheads and whatnot. What's your take on this whole situation, and maybe just provide us some insight into all that's going on kind of behind the scenes right now?
Yeah, it's very reminiscent, and I have a lot of memories of that 2015-16 season. Certainly seeing a lot of the same emotions from the curlers, and I certainly feel for everybody on every side of the issue. After speaking with a lot of athletes, obviously I've asked some questions, and I know people don't want to make the same mistakes that they made before. And I think that might be leading to a little bit of walking on eggshells and maybe not the full communication that needs to happen to get through something like this. So again, I feel for everybody involved, the curling manufacturers who have had to constantly pivot and spend time and resources and effort to adhere to what the current rules are. And it's going to take a lot of effort and time and private conversations and public conversations, but really just everybody to have those honest conversations about where do we go from here and what's best for the sport moving forward. And I know that's the intent of everyone, but people have been hurt in the past. I certainly was one of the athletes that was portrayed as potentially doing something wrong in the past. So I understand what it feels like for certain teams. And I think it's a shame that Team Epping has had such a great year and qualified for the slam of their own volition and had a difficult, I guess, not a welcoming party back to the slams that maybe they would have liked. So I feel for them and everybody who has to just constantly make these decisions. But I know everyone's hearts are in the right place. I know the manufacturers are always go over and above to ensure that their teams aren't left behind. And that's the tricky part, is everyone cares a lot, and that's leading to potentially a lot of conflict in the future. So, World Curling working together with the athletes is something that has to happen. Transparency has to happen. And at the end of the day, this will get sorted out. And I know everybody wants to have it as least messy as possible, but there's certainly going to be maybe some more things slung in the future. And I hope that's minimal.
Mm-hmm. And more broadly speaking, this is also a case where the world's top players are coming together, using their collective voice. We've heard about player empowerment in other sports, right? There's already players' associations in several other major sports. Is it time for curling to go in that direction? And what do you think having like a formal players' association would mean for the sport?
It's always been time for a players' association. It's an incredibly difficult task to overcome. There's been a lot of different iterations, people leading it to try to, again, get great results for everybody involved. But there's a massive difference of opinion, a massive difference of experience, how teams have, what countries they grew up in, what their experience is. It really affects it. So building a players association is incredibly difficult and a monumental task, and it will be difficult to do, but there needs to be a catalyst, and potentially the constant broom issues, whether it's materials or foams. Maybe this is the thing that can really push that players association over the line, and everyone can really have each other's backs and just care for each other first, and maybe put aside their own personal issues on whatever situation is happening at the time.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Earlier in the intro, I mentioned your partnership with the Cree Nation of Chisasibi and how you've worked with them through this first fully led Indigenous exhibition. Tell me about that experience and what that means to you.
It was probably the most unique, beautiful, rewarding curling experience I've ever had. Having the opportunity to work in USG with the Cree Nation of Chisasibi, with Rhonda Spencer, with Roy Niakapo, just the entire community really came together, supported. We did something really tremendous, introducing a sport to a community that hasn't really had curling all that much, but there's a lot of very passionate curling fans. Radisson was a place where there's a curling club many years ago, and they haven't seen it in the region since. So we put a lot of time and effort and resources and told our stories, brought together all the Indigenous curlers, and empowered each and every one of us to share time with youth and community members. Being able to share the ice with some Indigenous curling heroes of mine, with Al Hackner, Kevin Cooey, Jamie Cooey, Carrie Galusha, having the three of them back on the ice together in a different environment than what we've seen. That's not quite that competitive needing to win. It was more about sharing the experience and sharing with the community, and spending time with elders and learning different perspectives is something that we sorely need in sport. It's not all about winning. It's about bringing people together. And I look forward to doing more and working with the community, and you'll see more in the future. I can't wait.
Yeah, that sounds like quite the experience. What was your experience like with the youth in that area and connecting with them and introducing the sport to them?
It was very exciting. The one really big thing that came out that I noticed was the incredible level of athleticism, ability to make that, brain to body connection on the ice in a new sport, but taught in a certain way, and respecting the traditional norms was something that we had a lot of success very quickly. So I can see a ton of future champions if we can continue on with the legacy of the event and continue on in the region and in the north, with introducing a sport and reimagining it in the way of each individual community. What makes sense? People have been throwing rocks on ice for thousands of years. Curling is a modern game. It is a colonial game. So I think re-envisioning the sport and making it your own, no matter what community you're from, is the big takeaway I had from that event. And I look forward to, in the future, continuing to do that wherever I go. It's really given a new purpose to sport for me.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see this going? And is it just limited to the Cree Nation of Chisasibi, or could it expand even across the country in other areas?
When the event finished, we had a meeting of what's next steps. And one of the thoughts was there wasn't an Indigenous curling championship across Turtle Island previously. So the question was, why not? Why can't we do that? So that might be something that in the future we're able to resurrect and build into something great that can go across borders,
Mm-hmm.
across communities, and just really be inclusive and just kind of really reimagine the way we've looked at it. So maybe an Indigenous Turtle Island Championship could be something, or reach out to other communities throughout the world and work that way. And then cookie cutter, we can take that and move it into a different group. There's a lot of different nationalities in Canada and North America, and we should be trying to bring different groups into the sport rather than continue to do it the way we have. That is maybe not for everybody. So reinventing the sport is really, I think, the direction we're looking at going.
Yeah, that's very cool. We'll be sure to follow along with that, but let's switch gears a little bit, talk some mixed doubles curling. Of course, you were calling some of the action on the broadcast. What do you think about the event? And also, what do you think about the decision to hold the event so early ahead of the 2026 Olympics?
I think moving it early was a great choice. Really, really important to give as much time as possible for teams to figure out how are we going to compete at number one, qualify Canada for the Worlds, have a great representative or qualify Canada for the Olympics. But to gain that experience and to give just a lot of time for those teams, we need more time rather than less. I've always been against having a trials right before the Olympics. There's so many distractions. It's incredibly hard to get your family there. The more time, the better. So a year out is great. I'm really happy that Curling Canada made that change. And also for the event itself, though, the level of play is so much stronger than every year is getting better. There are so many great teams across the country, and there is an opportunity for maybe not the four-person athletes to get recognition and to have more of an opportunity and not really bang your head against that wall of elite teams all the time. So it's really nice to see there's new faces. The stories out of are incredible. Jalen Cotter and Jim Cotter were playing at such an incredibly high level. It's just, I got emotional watching them play together because you can see how much they love each other and how much they support each other. They're two great human beings performing at a really high level. And how often do you get to try to qualify for a world and Olympic championship as a father and daughter?
Yeah, that's so cool. That was a great story. They had a great week. Of course, they didn't win at all. Jocelyn and Brett were the ones to come out on top. What can you say about their performance? You mentioned such a strong field. We know some of the big names are in it, but they went undefeated, didn't lose a game. How did they do it?
Oh, those two curlers live, breathe curling. They always have their commitment to each other and going through what they have to do with their 4-person teams and playing at such a high level, but also to turn that over and play a whole different game together. I know when we were playing, we played that team a lot in playoffs. When we were playing, we had to play our best to even compete. We were fortunate to have those battles and occasionally get the upper hand, but I don't know anymore. They're an incredibly hard team to beat. They're very smart, clever players. They can control the rock very well, great judges, and it's going to be a very hard team to beat, but there are also incredible teams from all over the world, as we see every single year. It's no cakewalk to make the final 8 of a world championship for mixed doubles. We're seeing unbelievable emerging countries such as Estonia, that's one of the top mixed doubles teams in the world, Australia. It's great for the sport. It's really, really good for the sport. And the level of play in Canada has significantly increased across the board. And it's not just those household names who are getting it done.
Mm-hmm. That was sort of step one in being able to represent Canada at the Olympics. Now they've got to go to Worlds and put together a good performance. What do you think the chances are of seeing Peterman and Glant wearing the Maple Leaf at the Olympics now?
I think very strong. Certainly one of the teams to beat. Definitely medal contenders. Certainly can win the whole thing, but they're going to have to really bring it. They're going to have to bring their game and have fun with it. And I like that those two have a lot of fun. They bring a lot of intensity, but they're very enjoyable to watch. And Brett's always been one of the greatest sweepers in the world, and it's really hard to beat teams who can manage the rock, who can manipulate the stone by being so physical, but also be a great judge. Not sweeping sometimes is more important than being able to be a great sweeper.
Mm-hmm, for sure. After being a broadcaster, a spectator, does it fuel anything towards you and maybe a potential return?
Yeah, the juices got flowing again. I started to feel a little bit left out watching it on the screen. Certainly feel like I can still compete, and playing with Chelsea again would be amazing. I just have to sort out some body issues to ensure that I can return to ice and not be playing through the pain that I had to play through previously. But a couple years off has certainly helped a lot, and who knows where it's going to go. I'm very excited to curl in the Northern Ontario Firefighter Provincial Championships next week, though, in my hometown of Red Lake, where I currently live. I'm excited to host it and get back out there and see what I got.
Very cool. Well, best of luck with that, and we'll keep an eye on you maybe for another return to the, I guess I'll call it elite curling world, but I'm sure you'll rock it at the Firefighter Championship as well.
Thank you very much.
As mentioned earlier, the Grand Slam of Curling is back on the ice this week for its 4th of 5 events, the WFG Masters in Guelph, Ontario. 16 men's and 16 women's teams are vying for the title and a share of $400,000 purse, with equal prize money for both champions. Can anyone slow down Rachel Homan and Bruce Mowat? They've been red hot all season and will once again be the favorites to win in Guelph. Homan has claimed 2 of the first 3 Slam titles this season, including most recently the Coyote National, where she defeated Anna Hasselborg in the final. Team Homan is also the defending champion and gunning for a 5th Masters title overall. Meanwhile, Mowat has dominated the Slam circuit this season, going 3 for 3 while posting an overall record of 19-1. Team Mowat has 1 previous Masters title. That came in 2022. The last 2 years have belonged to Italy's Joel Retornes, who is looking for a three-peat this week. As you know, the Grand Slam is under new ownership this season, with the Curling Group taking over operations, and they've been quite public about their desire to advance the sport and increase its entertainment value. Case in point, they're trying out a new potential rule change at the Masters that's intended to increase scoring. Put simply, if you blank 2 consecutive ends, you'll lose the hammer. For context, men's teams have blanked consecutive ends 17 times in slams this season. It's not as frequent of an occurrence on the women's side, with 3 instances so far. It'll be interesting to see what impact, if any, the rule change has on strategy, but worth noting that the Grand Slam is also where some now widely accepted rules, including the 5 rock rule and the no-tick zone, were first introduced. So who knows, the back-to-back blanks rule could become standard down the line. Another new wrinkle for this year's Masters style, the top 4 teams on either side have their opportunity to draft their pool opponents, potentially adding another fun motivational element for the drafted teams. The action is underway as we speak, with the tiebreakers, quarterfinals, and semis scheduled for January 18th, and the finals taking place the following day. We will, of course, have a full recap for you on our next episode. It's good to be back, but of course that does it for this episode. Thanks to Colin Hodgson for joining us this week. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest news. You can also find every episode of the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Our next episode comes your way on January 24th. Until then, thanks for watching and good curling.